Καλημέρα αγαπητές συνάδελφοι, αγαπητοί συνάδελφοι, φίλες και φίλοι. Σας καλωσορίζουμε στο κεντρικό session του συνεδρίου, που είναι ένα joint μεταξύ του keynote speaker και του editors panel. Έχουμε τη χαρά και την τιμή, σαν keynote speaker, να έχουμε τον John Θανασούλη, Professor of Finance at University of Warwick. Θέλω να πω κάποια πράγματα για τον John. Το session θα λάβει κυρίως μέρος στα αγγλικά, και λόγω του John, αλλά και λόγω ενός εκ των editor που είναι από το Μακάο. So John, let me start by saying that he got his bachelor degree from Oxford University on maths. He continued with an MA in Oxford University as well as a second MA in the University of Cambridge. Finally, he got his Doctor of Philosophy at the University of Oxford. So outstanding studies, as you can understand. Currently, John serves as Professor of Financial Econometrics at the Warwick Business School, the University of Warwick, of course. He is Associate Dean for the Bank of England Partnership and a CEPR Research Fellow. He's also a panel member of the UK Competition and Market Authority. He has served on the inquiry group for the merger and of NP Power and SSC, Sainsbury's and Asda, Illumina Pacific, Bioscience, etc. So in many mergers that have taken place in the United Kingdom. He has served in the board of Oxford Investment Partners. He has been chair at Warwick University since at least 10 years. And importantly, coming to his research outputs, John is one of the very few academics who has managed to have 2 solo publications in the Journal of Finance, among many other publications out there. His most recent Journal of Finance publication, 2023, Competition and Misconduct, in the 78th issue, and previously the case of intervening in bankers' pay. This goes back in 2012. Today, John is going to come with another very interesting study, The Problem of Business Evil. We are looking forward for his talk. John, thank you very much for being with us, and wish you all the very best.
Well, ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ για την πρόσκληση. Ελπίζω ότι θα με επιτρέπετε να μιλήσω στα αγγλικά. Είμαι πιο άνετος στα αγγλικά. Όμως ευχαριστώ. Η τιμή μου είναι να είμαι εδώ. Right. The problem of business evil. Okay. So please feel free to ask questions. We can have questions at the end as well. So this paper asks a quite simple question. And it is, how is it that good people can become business villains? How is it that good people can do things in business which are scandalous, which we can all agree are bad? And I'll give you some examples in a moment. Now, the easy response is, and the response that you see in the international press, is to think, well, maybe these are just bad people. So bad people are just doing bad things, and this is what happens. But that's somewhat glib, unlikely to be true, I suggest. And history, I think, suggests that even good people can do things which ultimately we come to view as really very bad. So here are some examples. So first one, the WorldCom scandal. So this one was even larger than Enron, but was similar. The head of accounting, who was key, and this is an accounting and finance conference, the head of accounting was key in permitting the scandal to unfold. In court, because the US prosecutes this sort of behavior, he said, there are no words to describe my shame and humiliation. This is not someone who, was always bad and was happy with what he did. This was something that he found sad. The Sackler family is a name that you perhaps are aware of. Some of you will be aware. The Sackler family own Purdue Pharma. Purdue Pharma's main product is OxyContin. OxyContin is seen as the source of the opioid crisis in the United States. Over 500,000 people have died from addiction, which many people relate to the opioid crisis. But they weren't always thought of such bad people. So the Sackler families famously were very generous donors. They had a wing at the New York Met. They're big sponsors of the Louvre, the Taylorian in Oxford, and so on. They trained as doctors. They did significant work in psychiatry. These were people that gave their early lives to good behavior and subsequently have become some of the worst people that one could imagine. Bernie Madoff, who you all know, ran a Ponzi scheme. Although before that, he was also a big benefactor of the arts and gave significant money. And then at trial, he again, I am so deeply sorry and ashamed of his crimes. I cannot adequately express how sorry I am for what I have done. Sam Bankman-Fried, last example I'll give, I could give loads more, FTX. He was a proponent of effective altruism, which you may or may not have heard of, but I suggest that you Google it. It's the claim is that it's everyone's obligation to work as hard as possible so that they can give money away. Now, Sam didn't keep his money long enough to give it away. He went to jail before he could do that. Okay, so what are we going to see in this piece of work? It's a theory piece of work, but I'm going to do my best because I know that it's a general audience. It's a theory piece of work. I'm going to give you the intuitions, but the objective is I want to present to you a method or a mechanism, which I think is a very realistic one, which will explain why good people, even very, very good people, can knowingly find themselves doing bad things. And in finance and accounting, we have live examples of that. I've just given you some, and we would want to reflect on. The ingredients that I'm going to use are there's going to be uncertain news, uncertain longevity, so the person's not going to know how long they're going to be active for, fines, and ethics. We'll have all those features. Okay, so here are the key forces which you're going to see appearing in this work. Okay, so put yourself into a position where, and I'll repeat this intuition later on in the talk. Put yourself into a position where you start doing something which you think is probably okay, and you hope is okay, and so you begin it. So it could be that you're an innovator and you've got a product. You think it's a good product, otherwise you wouldn't do it, so you launch the product. Or maybe you're an accountant and you're fairly sure that the profits are going to be coming in and you don't want to report news which is very short-lived, unlikely to be reflective of the reality. And if you put the current state of affairs out there, it would generate big implications for your investors, credit, share price, whatever it might be. So you start the activity, but then you realize that you get some news that says, oh, actually, things are not so good. Okay, maybe this product is a bit harmful. I'm starting to see that there's a problem. Okay, you could stop the activity, but if you stop an apparently profitable activity, it's tantamount to admitting guilt. You're saying there is a problem here. What I've done has not been good. And so you will have to recompense the people that you've already affected. So there's a fine. But if you don't stop, what happens then? So if you continue the harmful activity, then you're going to be causing pain to others. And at some point, the public will find out. Put yourself in the position of people who were selling cigarettes. The data started to come in. Maybe it's linked to cancer. I don't want to admit it. But at some point, if you hide it, eventually it will blow up. Everyone will know it's linked to cancer. And then the fines will be huge. So would you want to carry on? Well, something might come up. The game might end. You might die. You might get a merger. You might be able to escape in some way. And it's these three forces which are going to interrelate in the model that I'm going to present to you and show why no matter how good you are as a person, it's possible that you can get yourself into a position where you knowingly decide to do the bad thing. And how that happens is I'm going to introduce the concept of an evil time horizon. And the key idea is that if you privately, as the innovator or instigator of this activity, if you privately discover it's bad beyond the evil time horizon, so late enough, then no matter how good you are, you would decide to knowingly continue with the bad thing, harming other people rather than admit. And you'll just carry on. Interestingly then, what about fines? We often think, if there's a problem with misconduct, let's just increase the fines, more punishment. Well, actually, punishment makes the situation worse if the sort of people that are engaged in business are reasonably ethical in the sense that they actually care about other people and worry about harm that they might be causing. So fines can be counterproductive. And interestingly, fines and public detection, I will show you, are not substitutes for each other. So again, governments and regulators often prefer fines because you can just increase a fine at the stroke of a pen and the person who's bad has to pay it, whereas public detection takes resources and people need to spend money. And so you think, well, increase the fine, don't bother spending the money, but they're not substitutes. So actually you can make the situation worse with fines. You do need to spend the money on public detection. We'll get to that. And ethical decision makers will show are desirable. So we want the people who are innovators, we want the people who are accountants to be ethical, to feel for other people. But sadly, they're unlikely to win an innovation race. And I'll try and explain why that is. Okay, some literature. Okay, so where does all this fit in to what we know? Well, economics has spent a great deal of time looking at the idea of homo economicus, so people who are totally just motivated by monetary incentives. And it's not very hard intuitively to understand why somebody who doesn't care anything for anybody else would mistreat them or do bad things. It's just the balance of what's the chance of me getting caught versus if I am caught, what's the pain of being caught. Becker famously introduced that, and many people, many very famous people, have explored this, that question over time. What's much more difficult is to understand why it is that good people, people who do care about others, might do bad things, and that's what this paper is going to ask. Now, the literature actually has looked at two questions which sound similar, but are actually quite different. So one of the questions is that you can find in the literature is how is it that good people who are doing bad things come to terms with that fact? So that you discover you're a good person, you'll discover you're doing something bad. How do you deal with that? There's a literature on that. In short, it goes through cognitive dissonance is the word that one would use. So in other words, people can't believe that what they're doing is bad, and so they change their beliefs as to what bad is. So you come to believe that bad is good. Okay, so the literature on that. There's a literature on that we can't control ourselves, the difference between short-term temptation with my long-term preference. So this is Nobel Prize-winning work, Thaler, and so on. Why is it that people who want to lose weight would rather that they weren't offered biscuits in the first place? If they want to lose weight, just say no. It's not so easy to say no, and you can just, rather than people, don't offer the biscuits. And then there's a literature that identifies that it's important to bring ethics into finance, from Ken Arrow and others, that we want to understand what makes people real when we think about issues that are of really first order importance, like misconduct and financial reporting and financial crime. But there isn't, there's been some work in finance on that. There's been more work on financial crime to do with the fraud triangle and so on. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and give something that actually has real structure and a micro foundation to understand what's going on. As I say, it's going to be a stopping problem, and with Poisson News. And there are some references there, Dixit Pindyke and Ben Melech and others who've used similar techniques. Okay, the model. It's going to be one slide, so it's very simple. And you'll be able to see what's going on, I hope. And I won't take you through I've got some slides on the maths of solving it, but I won't take you through them. But I do want you to understand the model. Okay, so here's the framework. Imagine you are, in your mind's eye, you can imagine that you're the Sacklers, that you've invented this great drug, and that you think is going to be a really good thing, and you want to introduce it to the country. It's a sort of you hope, a really good innovation, which is going to bring a lot of health benefits to a lot of people. So you're a decision maker, and you're undertaking an activity that you believe is good. Now, if you're an innovator, there's a chance that your innovation might not be good. Nobody can be 100% certain that every drug has no side effects out there. Things become known later on. So with some small probability, we know that the thing might be bad, but we honestly believe it's good. Otherwise, we wouldn't start it in the first place. And so you begin your activity, you sell your drug. There's a profit flow. This is a continuous time model. Let's call that pi for every period of time. And that's great. Now, if it is harmful, then the harm would outweigh the profit. So we shouldn't do it. It's not a welfare increasing thing. But remember, you don't think it's harmful, otherwise you wouldn't have done it in the first place. And my decision maker is going to be ethical, which will take the most standard way of thinking about it, which is other regarding preferences. So what that means is that if I'm the decision maker, I care about your welfare and your well-being, and I put some weight on that in my utility function, and we'll call that weight alpha. Okay, so the bigger alpha is, the more I care about how happy you are. If alpha is 0, I don't care about you at all. If alpha is very, very large, it matters to me whether or not you are okay. Okay. So discount rate R, and it's a continuous time model. At some point, I might get a merger, I might retire, I might get a health issue, and I have to leave the market. The game ends for me. And we'll call that S, which is going to be salvation. I'm out. I don't need to worry anymore. Okay. Right. So I'm selling my product. For me, everything seems to be going fine, and I'm happy. I believe I'm doing good in the world. But suppose the activity is harmful. If the activity is harmful, at some point, I will receive privately a signal that actually this product is bad. Okay, so it's only going to come to me. I'm the person selling the product, and I will receive a signal that the product is bad, and that comes with a Poisson probability B times dt. Okay, so what do I have in mind there? So that is, if you were selling cigarettes, your scientists in your company start to say, actually, it looks like there might be a link between smoking and cancer. Or if you're selling OxyContin, there seems to be a link between the people that are taking this drug and addiction. Or if you're in WorldCom and you said, look, these products, the revenues are going to come in, they just haven't paid this financial year, they'll pay next financial year. Next financial year comes and the business doesn't materialize. And then you start to think, oh, maybe this business isn't coming after all. Okay, so you start to get private signals that there's a problem. Okay, so you get a private signal. Now you know privately that this activity is bad. You're harming other people by continuing. Okay, you also know that this has set the stopwatch on a public signal. Okay, this is a bad product. So at some future time, can't be predicted exactly when, but with some Poisson probability, there will be a public signal that this is bad. And when that public signal arrives, the game is over. Okay, you'll be told to stop. So when those authoritative publications come which link cancer with cigarettes, it will be over. Or when people publish that VW is really polluting in California by, again, it was academics, then the public signal is there and everyone will know. Yes, please. No, of course.
Care about whether they get cancer? Do you care about their utility or their outcomes?
That's a very good question. So you started without the microphone, so I'll repeat. So, so the question was, with other regarding preferences, what aspect of the utility of others do you take on board? Is it their overall happiness, or is it just that they're getting cancer, for example? So this is a very basic, this is a very stripped down model. So the only thing I know about them, these other people, are that either I'm harming them or I'm not. And so I take into account the harm if I know I'm doing it. That's the only thing that's in there. Otherwise, their happiness, there are other aspects of their happiness which I can't affect. I don't know about. Oh, I see. So do you think that addicted people are happy? I think I think so that's a good question, but you feel that you are aware that you're harming them, and that's going to be the definition, that's going to be the definition of it. That's very good. Okay. So first, private signal, then that starts the stopwatch. At some point, there'll be a public signal. Okay. So what are my decisions? I can stop the activity at any time. Okay. But if I stop an apparently profitable activity, then it's a tacit admission of guilt. So I have to pay a fine for everyone that I've affected. And I'll give you in the next couple of slides some interpretation of what that fine is. So that fine is proportional to the length of time that the activity has been going on, because that's the number of people that I've affected. Okay. And if the public signal comes, I have to stop and pay the fine there. I've got private signal, I can decide. The public signal, the game's over. I've been caught. Okay. So I'll give you in 2 slides what that is. I just wanted to give, this. So this is a picture of the game that I've just described. It's a very simple game. I start something I think is good. If it's not, I'll privately learn first that it's bad at some random time. When I do, I have a decision to make. Do I stop or do I not? If I stop, it's an admission of guilt, fine. If I don't stop, at some future point, don't know when, but at some point, there'll be a public signal. I might die in between, or I might be a murderer or some way, the salvation might come and I'm out. So I might not get to my day of reckoning, but if I'm alive or still in business, I will. Okay. So some comments about the assumptions, and then we're going to work out how to put it together. Okay. So where does this public signal come from? I've tried to describe where it comes from. Okay. So it can be the buildup of client complaints, OxyContin, academic research. That was in the case of VW that I described. Smoking, likewise. Whistleblowers are important. So Boeing and the 747 MAX and the way that the tail started to make it go into the ground and so killed all those people, that came out of whistleblowing as well. What's the fine? Phi. Okay. Well, the fine phi you can think of as 2 things. Legal liabilities. If you're selling something and then it doesn't work, it's doing harm, the people that have already been affected, who've bought it, they have rights. They can go to court, they can sue. So lawsuits, class action. There's no limited liability. There won't be in this model because jail is completely possible. And indeed, the family can be in the frame. So in the Sacklers case, they tried to strike an agreement with the courts in the United States that's been struck down by the Supreme Court because it protected the family, and the family, their wealth came from selling stuff. So basically, they'll all have to pay it back. And the second thing is shame. So people, you care about, humans care about how they are perceived. There's good evidence of that. And if it becomes public that, you've been doing something which is bad, that's going to hurt. Okay. No defined end date, so that the decision as to whether or not to put your head in the sand and never admit, that is more clearly explained. I interpret the sort of salvation, merger can be included where I just hand the problem onto somebody else. You could say that the person is still liable for things business decisions made under their watch. It wouldn't make any difference. And there are other extensions that we'll look at as well. Okay. This is the roadmap. And, I'm going to stick to time, so I won't take you through all of this, but I'm going to take you through bits. So I want to tell you the main result, the business evil problem. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the evil time horizon. And then I think I'm going to jump to the conclusion. So I'm more than happy to talk about any of it to whoever wants to, and the slides are available if they want. But let me give you, in a sense, the punchline. So what happens? Okay, so if you solve this model, continuous time model, there's one key decision. When you get this information, if it's actually a bad thing that you're doing, you get the private signal. Do you stop or do you not? Okay, and it's going to depend on how ethical you are, and it's going to depend on when you get the private signal. How does it depend in that way? Let's have a look. So this is the result. Okay, so for any level of decision maker ethics, okay, so you determine, choose how ethical you want your decision maker to be. How much should your decision maker care about other people? However ethical that person is, there exists an evil time horizon, as I call it. There exists a time such that if the private bad news signal arrives after that time, are we okay? Yeah. So if the private bad news signal arrives after that time, then the decision maker will continue with the known harmful activity. So you choose how ethical you want your person to be. There exists a time such that if the private bad news comes after that time, your ethical person will knowingly prefer to carry on doing the bad thing rather than stop. And they will essentially be hoping for deliverance through basically merger or death. And if not, then they'll just face their comeuppance when the public bad news signal comes. Okay, so it doesn't matter how ethical our decision makers are. There's always a point where even the best person finds themselves doing a bad thing. Now, I'll give you the intuition in a minute again, and sort of give you a little bit more indication of why. But I think at trial, the words of Bernie Madoff sort of capture it to some extent. So when he said that when he began his Ponzi scheme, he thought it would be short-lived. He thought, his skill, he would be able to quickly get investment returns which satisfied the first people who invested in his scheme, and then he could be honest. He would move to really investing, and it would all be okay. But as time went by, he realized, he got his private signal, that no, he's not that skillful. It's never going to work. He is not going to be able to extricate himself. So does he admit it or does he not? And he said, however, extricating himself proved difficult and ultimately impossible. And as the years went by, I realized that my arrest and this day would inevitably come. So what's going on there? What's going on there is no matter how ethical you are, if you get the decision, if you get the private signal late enough, you have affected so many people already. You have said that, oh, the profits are going to be coming in. It's all right. Let's maintain our, we're just do this OPEX as CAPEX so that we can amortize over a different rate, which is essentially what happened in WorldCom. And then that looks like my profits are bigger than they are. You feel, you have been misleading essentially the market, if you want to be very formal and aggressive about it, for so long that if I admit now, then the punishment I'm going to get, which might be like losing my job, the shame, how can I be a respected accountant anymore after this point, is so big that I would rather just carry on in the hope that something turns up, or I can, maybe I can get to retirement and I'm out, and then I can blame it on someone else and, say it was, it was their fault. I just hope against hope that something will happen. And I know I would choose to carry on doing the bad thing. So the insight is that this effect that we see can happen, or does happen, no matter how ethical somebody is. Now, and there's some words that capture this. Mr. Yates, this was the WorldCom guy. When faced with a decision that required strong moral courage, I took the easy way out. Sam Bankman-Fried, I tried to hold myself to a high standard. I certainly didn't meet that standard. We could go on. Okay. The proof steps, it's a misconduct stopping problem that I won't take you through, so don't worry. But, if you think about how you might stop it, you might be able to guess that, there's a Bellman equation. You need to solve an ordinary differential equation so that you can work out what the value is of stopping versus continuing. You could have lots of different strategies as to when you might stop. You need to look through them, and you can work out that there's only two things that you might do: stop immediately or carry on forever and deny it. And we can identify when. Okay, so we know how to prove it. Okay. That's fine. And that generates, which I didn't take you through it, so, I'm not surprised if you don't know. But I've told you that the evil time horizon exists. So the next step that I'd like to take you through is to just explore a bit this evil time horizon. So how long do people need to be doing something but before which or after which they're then so locked in, they never will admit that actually what they're doing is bad. Okay, that's that evil time horizon. So there's a couple of results, and the middle one I think you'll find surprising. So the first one first. So this is a proposition, again, with a proof that's in the paper that I want to take you through. So if our decision maker, if our entrepreneur or business leader is more ethical, meaning that they care more about others, their alpha is larger, okay, then they have a longer evil time horizon. So what that means is it's longer before they are locked in. So if they get the news that what they're doing is bad, soon, or even not so soon, but not very, very late in, they'll admit to it and they'll stop. Okay? But if they're the more ethical they are, that the period over which they admit grows, which is great, and it's longer before they get to the point where they say, right, I'm going to hide this. Okay. So that I think you'd expect. What I think you probably wouldn't expect, because it's not a trivial bit of intuition, is what happens if we increase fines? Fines are a big way that we try and control bad behavior. We punish people. We fine them. We send them to jail. We, make them feel ashamed for what they've done. Well, if you have people, and I think most of us hope that the people we look around are human in the sense of caring about others and not wanting to actively harm other people for their personal gain. If people are like that, when we increase fines, then it's the top line there. We shorten the evil time horizon. We make the problem worse. People become locked in sooner. So increasing fines creates a problem whereby people become, instead of admitting and stopping doing bad things, they get locked into evil sooner and they will never admit. They basically encourages hiding the truth and continuing to do the bad thing. Okay. If they're not ethical, then the decision goes in reverse. Whereas there's no ambiguity about better detection. Okay. I want to take you through the intuition for that result. And then I'm going to then sort of just give you a little bit more of the results in a sort of very basic, sort of just an overview, and we'll move to a conclusion, because it's a keynote and I don't want to do too much, but I think it's sort of interesting to explore. So why is it? How can fines be bad? It's a graph showing that that's happening. Now, mathematically, the reason comes. I'll keep that off. The reason comes from this equation, but this equation doesn't mean anything to you, so I need to explain it in words. Okay, and I hope I'll be able to. So let me, sort of, this is the intuition why. So imagine that you are the business person who in good faith, you started an activity, and then you get a signal that says, this is bad news. What you're doing is actually not going to work out. It's harming people. Okay, and suppose you get that signal, that private signal, just on your evil time horizon. Okay, so you are just indifferent between putting your head in the sand and carrying on forever and knowingly harming in the hope that salvation comes through a different means, or admitting and stopping and paying your fine and coming clean. So you're indifferent. Okay, and now the thought experiment is, imagine we increase fines. What does that do? Right, now, at the moment, with the current fine level, I'm at a time when I'm indifferent between stopping and continuing. If I continue, I hate that I'm hurting you. I know now I'm hurting you. I hate that. And at some point, I will face the music. The public signal will come out, and I'll pay out. The fine will be huge. The shame will be massive, unless for some reason I die or escape, or for some reason beforehand. Okay. But remember, the fact that I'm hurting you is part of that, and a big part of that. Okay, so I don't like the fact that I would be hurting you. If I increase the fine, that makes the humiliation I might suffer at the end even worse, but it doesn't affect how much I'm hurting you. I don't like hurting you, and that's unaffected by the fine. I was indifferent between that and stopping immediately. If I stop immediately, what do I face? The fine straight away, the shame and the fine.
So if I increase the fine, that fully increases the pain that I have to eat right now. Okay. Whereas the fine was only part of what stopped me carrying on. So if you increase fines, you're affecting more the decision to stop. It makes it worse rather than carrying on. Stopping grows faster than carrying on in terms of how painful it is. So what that's saying is you want to stop sooner, because you definitely prefer to carry on rather than stop, which means your evil time horizon was actually earlier. Okay? So the problem has been made worse if you're ethical and you care about other people. Okay. So what more things do I want to tell you about that? Okay, so now I'm going to start to go a little bit more quickly to just sort of explain some of the results that are there. Okay, suppose that you're an employee. Okay, there's still an evil time horizon. There's still a point beyond which you wouldn't want to admit. And the reason is not because you're getting all these profits that, you're an employee, but the shame will still affect you and the result remains there. What happens if you're completely unethical? Well, it's not the case that you will always harm. You can admit at the beginning, and that's to do with the fine. So you can, the effects work in a way that you might expect. Okay. Welfare. A couple of words on welfare. We designed laws to deal with a situation which is bad. Okay. If things are good, then we don't need to worry. It's the bad situation that we need to deal with. So we would design fines to deal with a situation where what's been produced actually is harmful. Okay? And we can capture a quite simple expression for welfare in this framework, which means that we can explore what happens to welfare if we were to increase fines, have better people as decision makers, or to make the public detection of misconduct more prominent or easier. And that the paper does and can explore. So what are that's how you prove that. What are some of the things that you explore, that you find? Well, the world is better if people are more ethical. Okay, people who are more ethical stop more quickly, and so that leads to better outcomes for society. You might think that's clear. Well, that's very good. So we want more ethical people. But if we have more ethical people, we don't want high fines. We only want high fines if we have not very ethical people. So which ones are we more likely to get? Let me jump to that to give you those. Okay. Well, the first thing that's sad is ethical agents are more likely to lose an innovation race. So in terms of who's going to be bringing new products in to the market, unfortunately, it's the less ethical people. And it's not to do with the evil time horizon, it's to do with the concern that people have, or the innovator has, as to what happens if what I'm doing actually is not good. If I'm ethical, I care about that. And so that weighs on how much I'm willing to spend to introduce my product. If I'm unethical, I don't care about that, and it doesn't weigh on my thinking. But if people can introduce products and they face a fixed cost of introducing them in a sort of standard way, the average harm done to society is lower from ethical agents. Yeah, you can show that too. So we have this, as ever in economics and in finance, we have this dichotomy. We want something, but find the market steers in a different direction. Determined end date, e.g. patents, which weren't part of the model. The results all go through, and that's an extension. And penalty flexing, if you have punitive regimes, if you have leniency, you can explore that, you get the same results. Okay. This is my final slide, or my penultimate slide. Okay. So my policy implications, or what does, if your interest is sparked, I hope it is, and you go back and have a look at these slides and perhaps the paper, what would you see? So the main effect the key message I wanted to drive across is, no matter how ethical one is, so you don't need to worry about homo economicus, no matter how ethical one is, it's always possible to be trapped into an evil action where you knowingly cause harm to other people. And this happens in this mechanism if the confirmation that you get that the activity is bad, you get it late enough, and you just don't want, it's too late. You don't want to admit that what you've been doing is harmful. Improving ethics increases welfare. So we want good ethics amongst our business people and our accountants and our leaders in the economy. Okay. So better selection of decision makers, and in particular, that would mean understanding the harm that would be caused, V, and caring about it so that you care about other people, alpha. That is desirable. How could we try and improve people's ethics? What ways are there? Well, this is something that is done, right? And there are lots of ways to do it. So old ways that, we could do, there are professional training programs. That's not unusual. Fit and proper regime is something that we have in the UK, in the US as well. Internal ethics training becomes increasingly important. Many of the bodies, if you want to be accredited as an accountant and so on, ethics training is a key part of that process. But I think, for me, an important message of this is that actually it is important for business leaders to actually understand the harm they might cause. So maybe it is important to require occasional volunteering at, for example, food banks or food pantries, as they call in the US, or rehab clinics. If you're in medicine, which we have in the UK and the US, I'm sure you have them here too. Fines and detection are not substitutes. Okay, and so, fines, whether they should be high or low depends. Detection is clear. Better detection is always good, always increases welfare. Increasing fines can actually make the problem worse, especially if you do actually have ethical agents. If you know that decision makers are rogues, however, then high fines are optimal. Okay? And sadly, unethical agents would win a contest to launch an activity, and then they're more likely to conceal any evidence they have that the practice is harmful. And maybe that's particularly important today when I've been to the first session I went to today specialized on artificial intelligence. And if you think about the problems that, who is designing AI and really driving it at the moment, self-driving cars and so on, you've got, Elon Musk and his competitors and so on. So, we'd have to hope that those people are ethical and not incentivized if they get private bad news that these things are harmful, that they are incentivized not to admit to them. And so for this audience, although it was written in Latin, it concerns Greek themes. And I thought this was particularly valuable. I think the tensions here described are deeply human. And this was pointed out to me, and I think it's particularly amenable. So Virgil wrote the Aeneid, and this little verse here, I think, captures what it is that I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, John, for your very inspirational talk and excellent paper that you presented to us. So I will open the floor for a couple of questions. Professor Americas.
I will say very interesting and thought-provoking. I have a couple of questions. At decision-making, t equals 0, you have any measurement, probability measurement, that somewhere down the line, something harmful will be proven to you? Do you have any idea at t equals 0?
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. So,
Number one.
do you want to ask both? Sorry.
Number one. Number two, you spoke about private information. And step 3, the law is coming, fine or whatever, all right? If you don't have any idea at 0, and I give you an example, for example, environmental law, all right? You go to Europe, what you're saying here is very much applicable in shipping, all right? A vessel departs from India, for example, and goes to Europe. And when you go to Europe, there are restricted area to get in, but you don't know. You have the information. So when you make the decision to invest, let's say, in a vessel, you said things might change, things might not change. But if you try to be very ethical, then you are restricted yourself from innovation. You are restricted from risk taking. So now here's a critical point. To be ethical, if you said yes, absolutely, then innovation is reduced, risk is reduced. And from my point of view, the welfare will be less. All right? Now, if you make the decision and you say, well, 5 years down the line, something happened. Then I think for me, you have this interval of private information, and a prudent and ethical manager will adjust accordingly because nothing happens, at least in our society, do this now. Just I'm informing you somehow and allow you a time to adjust. So I think this ever interval is from private to public. Then is the person who is unethical or not. If you ignore, then I will use unethical. But if you adjust, life is dynamic. Things are changing. So, thanks.
Excellent, excellent comment. So I'll do with some comments as I understand it. Well, let me take them together. So you're absolutely right. I think that, and it's part of this. It's part of this framework that an innovator appreciates that if they understand that there's a chance that things might go wrong, and that acts as a deterrent to or inhibits the launching of an activity at all. As you described, it makes the anticipated payoff less. And so if there are costs of coming in, then you're less likely to come in. And those forces drive the results I had about who was likely to win innovation contests for the reasons, essentially the intuitions that you offered. So what I don't do, because it is difficult to do, is to say, if you take, as you did, take a sort of the bigger picture and say, well, if we want both innovation and then, having had innovation, ethical behavior, what's the optimal balance between ethics and, say, fines? That's A, it's a bit difficult to calculate. B, the problem is that the probability that something will not be safe, or the probability that something will be dangerous, is not known. It's very subjective. And so there isn't any objective thing to base policy on. Nonetheless, I think it's an excellent comment, and it's one I think I need to think about a little bit more. And I think what you were describing was, wouldn't we want, or wouldn't society benefit from having people who are willing to take risks initially, but then if they are unfortunate enough to find out that something is problematic, to be ethical at that point. So, in a sense, to sort of their ethics to be dynamic, or to be ethical when it mattered, when they could do something about it. And I don't disagree. I'm not sure how easy it is to, that sort of ideal timeline of ethics is, it's not clear to me how you would implement it. But I think the intuition is the right one. But I suppose I personally see that as a sort of unavoidable trade-off, in that you want people, to the extent you want people to be ethical when they get the bad news, that's going to inhibit their ability to innovate, and policy needs to think about the innovation question. But one could take the opposite view, which is let's think about the admitting to wrongdoing question more than the innovation question. So I think that, I mean, I think your intuitions are spot on, and I share them, and I need to reflect a little bit more, I guess, on how I how I bring some more of them in.
Thank you, John. Panagiotis.
Okay, John, very short question. Please, can you please elaborate on the degree of risk aversion of your agents, and a few thoughts about endogenizing alpha?
Okay. So my agents are risk neutral. So they're not capturing notions of risk in that sense. And if you brought in, and the model is very clear, I hope, or very simple. So the profits just roll in, and there isn't any risk associated with those, and the only risk is that in the news that might come. One could bring in these more ingredients, and I think it would be interesting, and it would create other forces that would sort of act as change the notes that you would hear on the overall piece of music that I described. But you ask a really good question, which is how do you endogenize alpha? They're all good questions. That one, but that's one at least that I've spent a little bit more time thinking about, and that was what I wanted to talk about at the end when I did my sort of policy implications, because I think actually there is a way of encouraging. Ethics is very difficult when you think, well, what does ethics mean? Who knows? Other regarding preferences is a bit easier, because you sort of think, well, that's how much do I care about somebody else's welfare, and how much do I even know about how painful it is or isn't for them if something bad were to happen. And that's where I suggested that some exposure to people that are affected would be really valuable. So to give you an example, in the subprime crisis that predated the Greek financial crisis and in a sense, set things going from the United States, we had a lot of people that were busy in the United States selling mortgages to borrowers who would never be able to repay if the prices didn't go up. Okay. And those mortgages were then used by other financiers in a process of tranching to create in securities which many people's pensions and money market mutual funds and so on were invested in. Okay. Now, wouldn't it have been better if some of those financiers had actually known or met people on low incomes whose pensions were going to be very, very modest, and for whom a sort of a $10,000 reduction per annum in their pension would be absolutely colossal. They might feel a little bit different to, when they think about a $10,000 reduction in pension. Like, well, yeah, it's a bit painful, but not that big a deal. And so some exposure to people is a way, I think, in which alpha, if you will, and V, how much it hurts other people and how much you care about it can be affected. So I'm a big fan of some of these paragons of industry meeting some of the regular men and women out there.
Can I ask a question online? I'm Jason. Hi, John. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. I have a question about your finding that fines do not seem to be very effective. Does it have anything to do with the severity of punishment or fines? If it's a very heavy fine or a very severe punishment, this would have some deterrent effect, a threatening effect, intuitively.
Interestingly, the answer is no. It's not for any level of fine. And the reason is that the fine affects both sides of the question. So when if you're unfortunate enough, you're an innovator, you have this business and you privately get bad news that what you thought was good is not, you could stop the fine affects how much you have to pay, or you could carry on hiding the information and the fine affects how much you will have to pay. So increasing fines or reducing fines has an effect on both sides of the seesaw. But whether it tips towards good or bad behavior actually depends on the ethics. So that's the reason why it's not clear, because it affects everything. It affects your decision to stop, and it affects your decision to hide and carry on. It doesn't just work on one side. So that in a sense is what creates the possibility for having two results, and then the paper, and then the ethics determines which way it goes. It's a good question. Surprising.
That's very interesting, because I heard that many people argue that, like in some emerging economies, the fines too light, so that there are that's the reason for the increasing number of frauds, financial frauds, and people just argue that the government should impose heavier fines to stop the frauds, hopefully. But your findings just prove the opposite.
Not necessarily true. It depends on how ethical people are. So if, and I'm not saying this is the case here, but if the business people in the places that you're talking about are not ethical and don't care about others very much, then high fines would be a good idea. If the reverse is true, high fines make the problem worse. So the question is really how much do these business people in the countries and jurisdictions that you have in mind, how ethical are they? And I don't wish to offer a view on that. I wouldn't have any information.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Konstantinos Baltas from Essex Business School. John, very insightful talk. Really enjoyed it. Actually, I was intrigued from one of the first inference you extracted, saying like, even if you don't have any intention, maybe sooner or later you may be trapped in a loop. What I was thinking, going back to your model, even though I'm an applied guy, I was thinking, since it's a continuous model, will be a bit less relaxed in the fact that, okay, the agent is either evil or not evil, whereas also could somehow conduct an analysis whether actually you can allow him here to change from being perhaps acting evilly in one state of heart of the time, maybe to change and do something better given the signal that he received. So it seems to me a little bit strict that she continues, the agent continues always on the same direction. And the idea is, I was intrigued from your inference, as I mentioned, that inevitably the agent will be looped in the trap. But if you like, let's say, as a Markov chain modeling, like a Bayesian approach, allow for a probability whether he could be able to change, how this will affect the welfare. Because in the end of the day, we're talking about the social welfare. So, yeah, thank you.
If I've understood correctly, I mean, it's a very good question. So as I understand your question, it is that is it not possible that how much people care about others is itself a function of how much they think they're affecting others? So, sorry? Yeah, I mean, I'm nervous about categorizing people as good versus bad. Okay. I'm nervous about categorizing people as good versus bad, because partly because I think defining a bad person is a bit difficult. I think, and we all have bad and good in us. As many people of religions have pointed out. But I mean. What I think you're saying is, aren't there even richer ways of modeling ethics and how ethics might adapt and evolve over time? And I think that's got to be true. So what I've tried to capture is, it's a quite simple model. I mean, I think it's a quite rich model in the sense that I hope is intuitive and people can see where the private signal, the public signal, and so on. But one could imagine more, sort of complications, interesting developments and additions about how people behave, whether their ethics change over time, which reflects, I think, an earlier question which I received, and I'll give it some thought. And I think that ultimately humans are complicated. So this road is quite a long one that we need to go down.
Okay. You presented us with a very elaborate model that is a bit difficult to follow. Nevertheless, I think it rests very much on a key assumption, which is the reference to the people, to the business people who have already been involved in some unethical activity in one or another way. However, regulation is not only, I'm talking about fines and sanctions, is not only about punitive, it doesn't have only punitive purposes, it also has deterrent purposes. So it seems to me that your model applies only to those cases who have already been involved in some sort of unethical activity, but not to those people that might be thinking of getting involved in the very first place. So there perhaps some additional, some extension of your model would be necessary to the second part of the individuals before you make the conclusion that fines may not play that role. Perhaps they may not, but what about those who were thinking of getting into that? There they do. And that is particularly important in the case of market abuse. Thank you.
That's a very good comment, and a very good comment, and one that I've thought about a little bit before. So it is. So as I talked about a little bit towards the end, I didn't have much time. There were results to do with entry and people deciding to come into the market, and there the fines do have clearly have an effect on whether or not people enter. What I didn't do, and it does reference, I think, an earlier question, is come up with an overall welfare which took entry or deterrence from entry from people who thought they might be doing something bad, and also the subsequent harm done to others, and did that sort of unified approach. And I think maybe that's something I need to do because it's clearly something that people are interested in. My nervousness about that is that is the subjectivity as to how harmful something is going to be, because we're talking about things that, this is think about an innovation or a new product. We're talking about something that isn't known by anyone. It's not known by the regulator. It's not known by the innovator. The innovator has beliefs. But the one thing we do know about innovators and entrepreneurs in particular is that they're over-optimistic. Otherwise, they wouldn't be entrepreneurs. So we would be potentially formulating policy based on the subjective views as to how good something is going to be from people that we know are selected to be over-optimistic in the first place. That creates its own problems for society, which is sort of pretty clear. Working through that wasn't obvious to me, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't do it. So I think it's a good, I think it's a very good question.
So let us give us one more, a big applause to John, and thanks to welcome Sterios and Andreas also in the podium. And we are going to move now in the second part of this main part of the session, of the session, yes. And of course, I would like to express as the Hellenic Finance and Accounting Association our deep thanks to the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens for the organization of this conference, and especially to three persons, to Aristidis Amitas, the Vice Rector of the University, to Nikos Siriotis, the Dean of the Department of Economics and Business Administration, and of course to Dimitris Kenourios, which is a member of the committee of the University of Athens. So now we are moving to the editors panel, and we have the great honor to have with us from Macau, and we are very thankful to him because for the time as well that he joins us, because I think it is evening over there. So we have Jason Zhejiang Xiao. He is, of course, a professor at the University of Macau in the Faculty of Business Administration. He is the joint editor of the British Accounting Review. He has published numerous papers on accounting and corporate governance and in many other leading academic journals, Journal of Accounting and Public Policy, China Journal of Accounting Research, and many, many others. She's also a principal fellow of the Accounting Society of China, and he participates in many, many committees. We are very thankful to have you with us, Jason, and we welcome you. With us is as well Andreas Charitou, professor of accounting in the University of Cyprus, a very good friend as well, friend of the society. Andreas has done studies in the past at the Athens University of Economics and Business. He has done a master and a PhD in the Pennsylvania State University. Of course, he's the editor of the International Journal of Accounting. He has had excellent publications in the past. Review of Accounting Studies, Journal of Financial and Quantitative Analysis, Journal of Corporate Finance, and many, many others. To say, he has been as well the dean of his school in the past, many administrative positions, and always a great servant of the accounting profession. Andrea, thank you very much to you as well. And we have, of course, Sterios Levedis, another great friend, professor of accounting in the International Hellenic University, editor-in-chief of the Journal of International Accounting, Auditing, and Taxation. He has served as well as a dean at his university as well. He has published in many leading academic journals, including the Journal of Accounting, Accounting Organization and Society, and many others. He has done his studies at his PhD at Strathclyde University in Glasgow, and of course, another excellent servant of the profession. So with those three gentlemen, we will proceed. So yeah, we are going to use the microphone, of course, to hear of us. And of course, I will come now with several questions that I have prepared for the editors. And of course, you open the floor to yours later on for my questions. So let me start by asking which are the attributes that a manuscript should have in order to be published in a good journal. And if you allow me, I will give the floor to Jason first because he's from a distance. So Jason, I will repeat the question. Which are the attributes that a manuscript should have in order to be published in a good academic journal?
Sorry, I did not quite hear the question.
Oh, you didn't hear, sorry. Which are the attributes that an academic manuscript should have in order to get published in a good academic journal?
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. First, hello from me from Macau. First, thank Professor Legakatis for inviting me. Also thank Professor Lemitis for nominating me to join the panel here. Okay, I'm honored to have the opportunity to share some of my views with you in terms of attributes of papers for publication in a good journal. Let me take this opportunity to briefly introduce the journal, okay, British Accounting Review, and then I'll use the British Accounting Review as an example to illustrate the question, okay. British Accounting Review is the flagship journal of the British Accounting and Finance Association. The journal was established in 1969, one of the oldest accounting journals. The journal is called Accounting Review, but actually it published finance papers as well, because the association, initially, it was the British Accounting Association, but later it became the British Accounting and Finance Association. Okay. The vision of the journal is that we aspire to become UK-based, but with global influence. And also, we try to embrace diversity and inclusivity. Okay, so the journal is eclectic and also pluralistic in terms of paradigms used, in terms of research methodologies, and in terms of the topics. So it's meant to be UK based, but we try to make it impactful globally. So in terms of readership, and in terms of authorship, and also the editor team, we got all those things globally. Readers, authors, and editors. The journal looks for publications with those characteristics. First, originality of the contribution. So contribution is very important. This is the first criterion we use to select papers for publication. And then relevance of the development of the subject. The paper should be relevant to accounting or finance and finance. So we interpret accounting broadly. The journal publishes papers in all sub-areas of accounting, from accounting, financial accounting to management accounting to auditing to public sector accounting and finance, and to taxation, accounting, education, accounting history, and so on. Also finance. I think in the past, finance we more focused on corporate finance, but increasingly I think we got more submissions on financial markets as well. So it becomes more diversified.
Thank you very much, Jason.
Quality of exposition is also another very important criterion we use. Not just grammatical errors should be avoided, but also the expression, the exposition is very important. Finally, methodologically, we look for rigor. Methodologically rigorous is very, very important. So four main attributes from our journal's perspective.
Thank you, Jason. I go to Andreas. Andrea, please.
Thank you, Dimitris. Before I start, it is a great honor for me to be in this specific panel. I sincerely thank the organizers of this conference. They're doing a great job. Special thanks to my friend Christos Negakis, who is organizing every year a great conference. Thanks, Christos. Now, I'm in front of a great audience. I know the majority of you have been publishing in leading journals. You've been extremely successful. And let's see what we can do as editors with Jason and Sterios, whether we can add something, in order for all of us to improve. I really enjoyed John's presentation earlier. It was a great presentation. And his topic in general, the message was, how could people, become evil and they are not that successful? Let me switch to that and say, how could hardworking individuals can become more successful academics and publish in leading journals? And especially, the majority of us here were Greeks, and let's have, a better, acceptance rate, a better quality type of papers, as Greeks or Cypriots, or other individuals that were here. And in this specific audience, I see we have several junior faculty, we have several new PhDs, not like us that we've been in the market for so many years, and maybe those that want better tips. Keep in mind that in order to be successful in academia, we have to have patience. Publishing in leading journals is like running a marathon. It's not like a sprint, 100 meters and finish. So take that into consideration. Is there any specific recipe for publishing, in leading journals? No. There's no specific recipe, because if we had known this specific recipe, all of us would have published there, right, John? Right? All of us. But I believe all of us have the ability to publish in leading journals. And let's see what we should take into consideration. I have some PhDs of mine. I'm going to discuss experience that we're having. They run a regression, they run 5, 10 regressions, and they expect, and they tell me honestly, I'm going to send that in JFE. I know they like JFE, I don't know why, better than Journal of Finance, but I will send in a couple of months. I said to them, no, don't do that. You should take 3 months, but I have done. I've run the results, and the results are good. No, we have to be very, very patient. And a lot of people, they expect to publish so many papers in 1 year. It's impossible. The market has become tougher and tougher, right? Year after year. Even if we're good enough, other people may run faster than us. So we have to be up to date all the time. I fully agree with Jason, what he said earlier. He said originality plays an important role, okay? Michael Roberts from Wharton has a video on web, and is an editor of Journal of Finance and associate editor of RFS and other top journals. When he was asked, you know, what factors should we take into consideration in order to improve your chances, not to publish, to improve your chances in publishing in leading journals, he gave a couple of factors. First, you have to have a novel idea. And this novel idea should be explained very, very well and have economic intuition, or as John, you know, put it earlier, to have social welfare effects. Right, John? Okay? These are very, very important factors. Is it enough? The answer, no. It is not enough. There are so many factors to be taken into consideration. Novel idea. What is a novel idea, and how do we acquire that novel idea? By sitting at our office, I don't think we're going to increase our chances. Conferences like those, we talk with different people, we attend different seminars, and some of them may be great ideas, some of them may not be so good ideas for us. But when we listen to those, we may get different ideas. We talk to colleagues. From colleagues, we can learn a lot of things. And also, a lot of us, they try to work with people in just accounting. I believe we increase our chances of publishing or having better ideas if we start working with people in finance, working with people in other disciplines, economics, management, sociology, all this stuff. This morning we had presentation about overconfidence, something that relates to psychology. We're going to have another paper presented in the afternoon about these specific issues. So in this specific case, we get more novel and different type of ideas. Also, by reading the financial press, we can get other ideas from the financial press, reading the regulations, new regulations as far as ESG is concerned, or banking that you mentioned earlier, John. In this specific case, we can get ideas. Now, there are so many things that I would like to discuss, but let me say a few things as far as journal, International Journal of Accounting and Abacus, that I serve in the first one as editor-in-chief, and the other one as associate editor. As far as International Journal of Accounting is concerned, year after year, we're getting so many papers. We're getting between 400 and 500 papers a year. I see several of you are referees, either for International Journal of Accounting or Abacus. Referees nowadays are a scarce resource. And we would like to send papers to referees only and only if we believe that these papers have the opportunity to be published, you know, later on, after 1 or 2 or 3 rounds. I would say that the publication percentage of acceptance rate is very, very low in International Journal of Accounting. It's about 5%. So keep in mind, 95% of the papers submitted to the International Journal of Accounting are rejected. And out of those, more than 50% are desk rejected. Desk rejection is not 50%. It's much, much, much higher. Why? Because we want the referee to spend time on a paper that is going to have better chances to be published. Some of us, we rush. We write a paper, first draft, we don't give it even to our colleagues, to anybody. We don't present to conferences, we send it. That's rejection. You don't get any comments. If you are lucky to get some comments, some of us, or several of us, what we may do is just get it, and the next day, when I was young, we were putting that in the envelope. Today, you don't put that in the envelope. You send it to another journal. The chances of getting accepted to the same quality journal, they are much, much smaller because you may get the same referee. So be careful, spend time, before you send the paper out. I have so many comments, so many issues to discuss. Theoretical framework plays a very, very important role beyond originality. But let me give you the opportunity to my friend Sterios for his comments as well.
Thank you very much, Andreas. First of all, I'm thankful for the invitation. Christo, thank you very much. And John, thank you for the presentation. And thank you all for your presence and patience. I will speak mainly about GIET, about the attributes that probably we need in order the paper gets published, gets accepted. So in any single paper, there are two main things. The first is the idea, and the second is the execution. The idea is always more important than the execution, because even if we got a perfectly executed paper, which cannot be the case because perfect research is similar to perfect health, doesn't exist. If the idea is good, then probably we have more chances the paper moves on. So we have to work a little bit more about the idea, and of course execution is important. Now, the idea mainly comes from what we call a grand challenge in accounting research. And there are many issues related to how regulations adapted and so on, and many others. I can speak later on. And the second thing is what Andreas mentioned about novelty. Accounting research, many people say that accounting research is a communication between scholars. So novel studies mean is a study that changes this conversation. And this can be done because there is a new theory proposed, a new construct, or my favorite, we got new results that are new and contrast everything we know so far. Novel studies will be more difficult to be published. Another issue which is very, very important for us is international journal. So papers need to meet this dimension. If accounting research is what we examine the supply side and the demand side of accounting information. So, sorry for being very simplistic, but many studies we examine how accounting information is produced, is validated and disseminated, and on the demand side, we examine what users do when they get this information or what they don't do. Now, we know now that all this game is important. Many factors like legal, economic, cultural characteristics, micro and macro dynamics, informal, formal institutions, and so on, play a significant role. So, for example, FRSs, we know now that they're adapted differently all around the world because of these factors. So, GIAT serves on this purpose, to disseminate and support this agenda. The papers we accept, the acceptance rate is considerably higher, something like 12%, but we got a submission fee of $100, and that actually decreased a lot the submissions. I'm happy for that, because we don't have to reject papers that is a lost cause. There are more chances you get published, but still it's 1 out of 10 papers that are submitted. I don't want to monopolize the discussion, so we can speak more about it if you wish.
If I can say something, Dimitris, I fully agree with Sterios as well. Another pitfall that we have as academics, especially junior faculty and staff, there are so many databases. Right now, the majority of the universities, Sterios, and John, they have those databases. So we learn as PhD students when we start our PhD to access data from those databases. And we find it easy. We learn how to retrieve data, we run regressions, we get the results, and we believe that's the best way to publish a paper. That's not the reality, okay? Last year, we had excellent presentation, was one of the best that I have seen, Christos, by Manthos Delis and Yorgos Panos. They have done an exceptional presentation discussing how to access proprietary data. And I believe, and I fully agree with them, I believe it's always much better to create your own data set. Spend much more time to create your own data set. It's going to be unique. It's going to be much easier for you, and then start working. Because if you access data from CompuStat or CRISP or IPES or any other database, everybody has this data. In top universities in the United States, the faculty members, they never go and access the data. They have an array, in one day they get everything. They run, in few days, everything. So why would you have a competitive advantage? You will not. So spend time. Greek data, there are so many Greek data that we can use. And have your own database and then work on that. You're going to have a competitive advantage. Thanks.
Thank you very much, all of you. Let me go to the second question. And we will start on the reverse side now. So you will be the first to answer. What should any author be cautious in the research design of a manuscript?
Well, I mentioned about the execution part. This is quite important. I think the personalization of the main models should be crystal clear. There should be a very good explanation of the model, which should be quite recent. So consider recent literature. The one issue that probably is my own thing is that sometimes, but I have seen reviewers rejecting papers this way, is that the hypothesis is one way and there is no other way to be a reverse. So many times reviewers come up and they say, okay, if this is, that's the only thing that could happen, it's something we know. And I don't expect something different. So how we draft hypothesis, again, is very, very important. An issue which is, again, very important is, and sorry, I don't want to play the heterogeneity police, but always reviewers go and ask about the heterogeneity issues. And because the issue of causality is very important. So when I was young, my mom used to tell me, Sterios, play basketball in order you become tall. But when I studied statistics, I understood that it's just that tall people play basketball. So what causes what is very, very important. And I believe it is always good we indicate what is the endogeneity problem. Is it measurement errors? Is it omitted variable? Is it selection? Is it reverse causality? What? And what we do about it? Because I think reviewers always come back, and endogeneity is one of the most, one of the factors that reviewers sometimes, and sorry for saying, just kill the paper. So I don't know if associate editors or editors have any kind of chance to accept the paper that you get such a kind of criticism. Also, it's always important, we test things a lot. So we have many sensitivities and robustness check in order to see that what we propose and what we suggest is robust enough and is not caused because of misspecification or issues like that. So, Dimitris, that's actually what I want to say.
Sterios, you answered the questions. As far as the specific, you provide all the answers to this question. I fully agree with Sterios. What we observe is that several times hypotheses do not relate to the empirical tests. So be careful when you write your study. The other thing is that we get several times in the journals papers that they are outdated. Okay? You have to explain that. You have to have a good reason why your data stop at 2005, for example, or at 2010. Several of us, they get rejections and we keep sending the paper all the time. So we have to avoid that. I fully agree also with stereos as far as econometric issue is concerned. You have to test, whether your models are best linear and bias estimators, stuff. Other thing that we observe to a great extent is the following. We know that you can run different type of models. And the majority of us, what we do is we submit the best one. Nowadays, journals pay a lot of attention to robustness, sensitivity analysis, and additional tests. So your results must be robust to additional tests. So please pay attention to that. Okay, thank you.
And Jason, the floor is yours now.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to just add a few things maybe about qualitative research design, because the British Economic Review publish many qualitative papers. So we have some special issues probably relating to this type of research. Many people don't submit their research instruments, even though we require them to do. This is a basic issue. Okay, so if you have interviews or similar research instruments, you should submit together with your paper. Another issue is like, how do you ensure your validity and reliability in qualitative research? This is not like quantitative research where you can use statistical methods to ensure what validity and reliability. But for qualitative research, you need to think hard like how you achieve those. Like you can do data triangulation, probably also researcher triangulation, or if you do interviewees triangulation, because you multiple sources of the data to make sure your data are reliable, and then your analysis is robust. Okay, that's another issue. A further issue is ethical consideration, particularly in qualitative research, because you do field research, you probably use interviewees. You need to make sure that the interviewees are informed of what the purpose your research is, and ensure confidentiality, and also ensure that your research will not result in emotional distress to the interviewees and other research subjects. Okay. So another issue in the design, which is very important, is the generalizability of your findings from your case study, for example, which probably is one of the dominant qualitative research methods or methodology. How can you ensure your generalizability? Maybe you don't consider statistical generalizability, but you try to make theoretical generalizability. So that's some special considerations in qualitative research, because the British Economic Review published quite many qualitative papers. So we have some special considerations in research design. Actually, there is another issue relating to qualitative research, which is people probably confuse two types of qualitative research, actually. One is kind of a positivistic qualitative research, which is probably more like the quantitative empirical research. The other one is the interpretive qualitative research. So people probably cite the seminal papers to justify their research design, but they cite the longer papers to provide legitimacy for the use of their research design. This is a very very vital issue for qualitative research design. I'd like to tell you that we are editing an invited paper, which is close to acceptance, I think, which is about how to write a qualitative research methodology section. Okay, so it's a leading researcher on qualitative research. So we invited him to write a paper dedicated to how to write this research design section. This will probably appear in the journal very soon. Okay, stay tuned. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jason. And back to you. From your experience, what are the biggest mistakes being made on academic papers? And of course, they lead to a rejection or a desk rejection decision. Have you heard of me, Jason?
Yeah.
A backup question to you. What are the major mistakes?
The fourth question, or the third question, the rejection decision.
What are the biggest mistakes being made in academic papers, and they lead to a decision for a rejection of the academic paper?
Okay, let me. Okay, as we have a very high rejection rate, so desk rejection rate is probably over 60%, and then over 30% of rejection after the review. So I think the main reasons for desk rejection and also the subsequent rejection is the lack of significant originality, novelty, and contribution. This is the single most important reason for rejection. Okay? Lack of originality, novelty, and contribution. Okay, that's the single most important reason. Then there could be other reasons like methodological problems we mentioned earlier, okay, and also data problems, and then theoretical problems, as Sturgis mentioned, like if you have you don't have tension, which could be a problem. Okay, there's empirical research, but actually recently we have experienced some quite not a huge number, but some very increasing number. I think one is the duplicate submissions. This has become an increasingly alarming issue. Okay, sometimes we receive a paper, but the system has detected the paper has submitted to 3 journals at the same time. This is an amazing, alarming issue. Okay, another issue for desk rejection is the very high similarity index or plagiarism. Okay, including self-plagiarism. Okay, we have a convention. Okay, we limit or normally use 15% of similarity as a rule of judgment. Okay, if over this percentage, then we would have a very close look, and that's another one. Another desk rejection reason is the paper does not have any relevance to accounting or finance, so out of scope is another major reason. So that's the main reasons. I think one of the other reasons for rejection is the lack of sufficient institutional background, because this is also an international journal, the British Accounting Review. So we look for sufficient background information to inform the international readers and also provide justification of why this context is useful, is interesting to international readers.
Great comments by Jason. I fully agree. I know all of you spend tremendous time to write a paper. It's a big investment for all of us. Do you want an editor to spend 15 or 30 minutes to desk check your paper and not even get some comments from the referees? The answer is no. Some tips, because we get so many papers, as I've already mentioned. And for me, sometimes it takes 15 minutes or maximum 30 minutes to figure out if it's desk reject or not. So be careful. It's exactly the same when they say, when you go for an interview, the person who interviews us or you, in the first 90 seconds, on average, he or she decides whether you're going to get a job. You don't want the same to happen on the opposite way for the editors. What I look at pretty quickly when I get a paper, pretty quickly, is it well written or not? You get that idea from abstract or in the first paragraph of the intro. If it's not clear, chances are it's going to be desk rejection. Another thing, data set, outdated. You can justify that, but you cannot justify outdated references. Reference to be 10, 15, 20 years back. So what I'm saying is that spend, a bit more time, 1 or 2 or 3 more days, and improve that. Another thing is that a lot of us, they find a nice study in Journal of Finance or Accounting Review using US data. We get it, we apply the same thing, identical methodology for Greece or Cyprus or for any other country. You have to explain how does this specific type of study that we're doing for Greece, are there differences as far as institutional framework, directives, or any other laws and regulations with regards to Greece or with the other country? So you have to explain it very, very clearly. You have to have theoretical framework, institutional framework, or economic intuition. These are very, very important factors to be taken into consideration. Some studies, some of us, including myself, sometimes we say, this study is the first one. Actually, Sterios, gave that comment this morning, right? Sterios, another paper. It's the first study. Who cares? Or another thing that we're stating several times is that we refer to several studies that have taken place as far as our research project is concerned, and we say, since prior studies had mixed results, we continue with this specific study. You don't add anything with that. And most times what the referees are saying is that, what are you doing different from other researchers? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think that one issue that the paper gets rejected is when it doesn't meet the attributes we discussed before. So when we submit papers to any journal, we got to understand these attributes, and we need to understand the level of contribution that needs to be reached. And this is different. To Accounting Review, Journal of Finance, to British Accounting Review, to GIAT is different. And we need to understand that. Now, as regards revisions, there are 2 main issues that papers get rejected. The first is we don't convincingly actually answer the questions that have been, or the suggestions that actually we got from the reviewers. Most of the times we got 10, 15 comments by each reviewer. So we got to handle 20 to 30 questions that sometimes is not easy. We have to work very hard, and we have to be quite, we have to say the truth. Because sometimes 1 or 2 comments, we cannot answer. It's not a very good idea. We try to fool the reviewers, because it's very likely the reviewers are more experienced and more clever, and I dare to say more clever than us, and so they will find it. So I'm very fortunate and very happy that some of the reviewers we engage at GIAT and their editorial board members, they just target just 3 journals. Accounting Review, JAR, and ZAI. That's it. But they review for us. And they have the capacity to reject, let me say, any paper, any paper. So if they understand that we try to somehow to fool them, they will come back angry. And there is no way you survive. So I think the 2 things is that we have to work very hard to do whatever we can to meet the suggestions of the reviewers and try to be truthful. Because one of the comments, maybe we cannot do it. We just reveal it. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, for the answers. The last question by me, because we are running out of time, and before I will come to the audience, would be for you to tell us which are the interesting topics in our days, based on what you see. Stereo, I will start from you.
Okay, well, that's a... Hello? Okay. So that's always tricky, Dimitris. I guess that in accounting, there are some, as I say, great challenges. So we will always be interested to know more about how regulations actually are adapted. So whether they make sense, they have some positive or negative effects. Definitely the issue of reporting quality, of audit quality, of tax evasion, control systems, stuff like that, will be always important for accounting research. But we have to understand that things change. And issues that become very important to businesses and to societies need to be considered. So that's why we see nowadays that we got many papers about how technology changes the accounting profession or the finance profession and so on. So we got many topics about big data, artificial intelligence, and stuff like that. And also, as I mentioned about society, we have lots of things, and we've seen that in the panels. The sustainability issues are very, very important nowadays because they mean a lot to societies and business as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sterios. I fully agree with Sterios, but keep in mind, a novel idea can be in any discipline. So I wouldn't concentrate in a specific discipline and say to you right now, this is the best area. A lot of us, they fall into a trap because everybody's doing ESG nowadays. We want to do ESG, but we have to have a good idea. It doesn't mean if our colleague is doing work on ESG, all of us are going to do this kind of work. And ESG, keep in mind, it's a very trendy issue, needless to say that. ESG relates also to governance. Governance has been, a prominent type of research topic for more than 30 or 40 years. And governance and ethics is one of the topics that was discussed today by John. It's an excellent idea. But, what John has done, he put a theoretical framework and discuss issues, that are very, very important. Even though John was discussing WorldCom and Enron and Madoff, and these kind of scandals have been, for 20 years in the market, he tried to motivate his study because everybody knows, but he had an excellent theoretical framework and economic intuition, right? With welfare effects on stuff. So don't, fall into the trap to do whatever you are, fellow faculty member or a friend of yours, is doing. Definitely ESG is selling a lot. Need to go through directives. As far as ESG, if you want to do something, there are so many directives from the European Union, especially from Europe. And since we're here in Europe, it's easier, but make sure you read the directives. You understand very clearly what these directives are about and what is unique. Another directive, a recent directive, is going to be applied in European Union countries related to the diversity. Just read it very carefully and see whether you can add something as far as I is concerned. Artificial intelligence plays a very important role, as Sterios mentioned, but what I would like to stress is whatever I mentioned earlier. Make sure you understand interdisciplinary type of work. Try to get into another area. Try to collaborate with your other colleagues from other disciplines. And in this specific case, it's going to be easier for you to get better and more novel ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. Jason, your opinion about the best topics?
Thank you. Thank you. Obviously, this is a huge topic. Okay, we can do it in a month probably without being able to answer the question. I thought because of the rapidly changing environment, like the emerging technologies, so fast. Okay, and also at the moment we have this ESG frenzy. Okay, and then we have also lots of multiple sources and formats of data. Okay, we have the traditional commercial databases, but also we have the social media. We have lots of online platforms providing lots of data. So those trends. In addition, we have lots of regulations. Those phenomena, those trends provide us with lots of research opportunities. I think in light of those changes, the first thing for accounting researchers is probably keep tracking what is the future for accounting, for auditing, for accountants, auditors. This is a very significant issue, even though we have been doing research on this, but we still do not know, like in 10 years, in 20 years, what's the destination of this profession, and also our education and what research will be needed. This is a major issue. And related issue relating to the rapidly changing technology like AI, blockchain, and so on, okay, would be research on those issues like how humans interact with AI, with so how the interactions deserve lots of research, like the ethical issues relating to this, how the decisions are made, then what kind of ethical issues arising from this interaction, and relating to auditing, like when auditors use AI for making auditing decisions, judgments. Now, what effects would that be on auditor independence? Those kind of issues. Okay, and also, what are the approaches for auditors, for accountants, for CFOs, and the CEOs? Okay, interact with AI to make decisions. What are the more effective or more desirable approaches for those interactions? Yeah, those would be important issues. Like relating to ESG, we have so many topics. Okay, I've looked at the publications in the major journals. I've discovered one thing which is not much researched, okay, which would be interesting, like how financial data are used in combination with non-financial data by different stakeholders. Okay, we know that we have lots of researchers to do. They have been doing the integration of financial data with non-financial data, but we don't know much about how those two types of data are being used by different stakeholders for what purposes, and what are the effectiveness or the consequences of those uses, different combinations of those different data. So these are the just some examples of research questions which are interesting. I think we need lots of more research.
Thank you very much, Jason. So questions from the audience. Please raise your hand. Yes, Eugenie.
Thank you so much, everyone. Very interesting presentations and answers. I want to touch a bit on AI, but not from the side of being an interesting research topic, but on how you believe that can jeopardize our own work considering that there are so many, articles out there now saying that, there is so much papers being written by AI, and how all these softwares that they are available, like Turnitin, for instance, really can actually identify and locate that, yes, this is indeed an AI written paper, or this is, like a human being has written the paper and so on. So I would like you to listen to your reflections on that, because I think that this is something that might basically put at risk our work as researchers. And yeah.
Because we don't have enough time, I would recommend one of the three of you to answer the question, and just one of each of you to answer any questions that comes from the audience.
Anyway, thanks, Diogenes. Definitely, artificial intelligence can help us, collect data, maybe easier, and find the reference and all this stuff. But I don't think that artificial intelligence, if it is used in the best possible way, in the right way, is going to jeopardize our type of work. Have you ever put down, in artificial intelligence, give me the best investment? What answer did you get? I put it down. Give me the best investment. Which is the best investment? Artificial intelligence. To see where I'm going to invest. I get a bad answer. So it seems to me the same thing may happen. You can say to AI, write a nice paper for me on ESG or, on governance or any other topic on auditing, but it can write something, but I don't think it's going to be up to the level to be published in a good quality journal because there are so many limitations. And also, if you're going to get a lot of references, the majority of the references are incorrect. They never exist. So, on the one hand, it helps us to speed up the process with the papers and this stuff. But on the other hand, I don't think it can assist us. My personal opinion, to get a paper published in a leading journal. You can get a paper published in a lower quality type of a journal, but keep in mind, Turnitin, shows exactly the percentage of your paper, gotten from artificial intelligence, ChatGPT. So you cannot get a paper, so you have to change, you have to understand. So that's my personal opinion.
Thank you. Well, I think the issue exists. So we received a review that was an AI review. Hopefully, it didn't make sense, so that's why we got to check it out. But I know the same exists in other journals, like Management Science and many other journals, so it is the case. So at the moment, I agree with Andreas, we can handle it. It is in the agenda of publishers, okay, to develop much better, because technology changes, and so it gets improved, not only for the ones who want to take advantage of it, but the monitors as well, yeah? The publishers and editors and so on. I'm a bit worried about the future, I got to say, but at the moment, we believe we don't run huge risks. Some risks exist.
Thank you. Goes to Sandra Cohen now.
Hello. Thank you very much for these presentations and the food for thought. I think that all of us are publishing, and in order to publish, it needs two to tango. That means it's not only the author, but it's also the editor and the reviewers. And I would like to talk about reviewers a little bit. I understand that you have more possibilities to publish if you have a novel idea and if it is interdisciplinary, and if you apply a methodology that is modern. For example, you don't just have regressions, but you may have some experiments, PLS, and other methodologies that are state-of-the-art today. But this needs that your reviewers are also suitable to review papers that are out of the box. So sometimes you end up with reviews from reviewers that do not actually deal with your paper because they do not have the expertise to do it. I think that reviewers are a scarce resource. I totally agree with Sterios that sometimes they also use AI to come up with their review reports. So I think we should invest more on the abilities and the skills of reviewers because they eventually decide about whether our paper will be published or not. And personally, I'm sometimes very much disappointed by reviewers that they have not spent enough time to complete a review, or they have taken too long in order to submit their review. So I think that in this publication game, we should not only focus on the authors, but also on the other side of this game. Thank you.
Jason, if you want to tell us your opinion.
Or maybe not this one. I couldn't quite hear the
Okay.
question.
No worries.
Sorry.
Sandra, your question is excellent. I really like it. Okay, referees always play a very, very important role. And a good referee is the one that gives constructive comments. Sometimes, referees may be very, very negative. This is not a good referee. Unfortunately, as we mentioned earlier, referees get so many papers. We believe that we have the referees, especially for our journal, but the referee may get, papers from different journals. It happened to me a few times, trying to look for a referee for your paper, for example, in general, because it fits and says, I have other 2 or 3 papers, I cannot. So we cannot find always the best referee. So it happens. But we want, the referee to pay a lot of time on the paper. Editors should pay attention as well. It happened to me in the past. I got referees on the opposite way, both of them with 2 lines. Accept, accept. It happened to me, both referees. One wrote 2 lines and the other wrote, 5 lines, second review, and all this stuff. And when I saw the paper, I wrote 7 pages report from the editor, reject. So it's not the opposite way. Okay, we rank the referees. It happens. I fully agree, and we would like to improve because we want to get constructive comments. But unfortunately, referees are a scarce resource. That's why we reject a lot of papers. That's reject.
I definitely agree. But well, actually, I believe that the job of the associate editors is the most important in any journal, because they select the reviewers and they monitor the whole case. This job, the associate editor should provide fixed effects in every paper. So most of the times what we try to do is that we try to get a person like Andreas or Manthos, so that they have this expertise and this knowledge, that they look the research field from an airplane. So they have a wide view about it. And sometimes we hope we get some people that just finished the PhD in a good university, so they know they have a very good expertise about statistics and blah, blah, blah in the literature, and we try to combine both. But Sandra, sometimes, you send a review and you get a decline, and you second, and third, and fourth, and then it's very, very hard. And all journals confront this reviewer crisis problem. So sometimes it's not easy, but I agree that we have to do more.
If I can add, Dimitris, in both International Journal of Accounting and Abacus, we use 2 referees. Okay, maybe an advantage or disadvantage. In top journals, they may use only 1. For example, JAE is only 1 referee. You cannot find always, the top quality referees that you want to. I know, I rank my referees, okay? And I know who is top and who is good. So I avoid sending, the same paper to top 2 referees, okay? But the majority of the times we get good comments. You mentioned also earlier, and I forgot about AI. I was taught about that. It never happened to me. okay, that they get the answers from AI. There is another problem that you could have mentioned. Several referees, when you send them the paper, even though it's blind review, they search on the web and they see the name. Is it ethical or unethical? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to ask you how many of you are doing that. But I'm a person, I'm a human being, I'm biased. Andreas Haritou is biased, definitely. Okay? That's why I've been refereeing papers for so many years. I never check on the web to whom the paper belongs to, on purpose, because I will be biased. And once I saw a paper by top individual publishing the top journals, and I reviewed the paper. If I had seen his name on the web, definitely I would have been more in favor of that individual. I cannot say his name. I rejected the paper. And then when I saw his name published later on, you know, the paper, I said, oh my God. You understand what I mean? So we have to be very, very careful in this specific case. I want my referees, we want the referees to be as unbiased as possible, because it happens. When you know the name of the referee and of the author and publishes in top journals, more likely not to say revise and resubmit. If that author has never published, you're biased ahead of time and you say more or less, you know, reject. Thank you.
Very much to all of you.
Just one issue. What I want to say is that we need to as much as possible accept the review invitations. This is particularly important for the new academics, if you like, because we learn a lot through this way. And this is actually fundamental in academia, the voluntary review process. And also, good reviewers maybe are invited to the editorial board, and very good editorial board members maybe become associate editors. And now this is the pool that next editors come from. Thank you.
Thank you, Stergio. So at this stage,
Dimitris, you know, 30 seconds.
I don't have time, Andreas.
30 seconds, if you don't mind, to conclude. 30 seconds, Dimitris, conclusion. Okay? We talked today about, you know, research, how to improve this stuff. Research has dark side and bright side, like the coin that has two sides. I observe that today we talk more about the dark side than the bright side. But I want all of you, and especially the junior faculty and the PhD students, to look at the bright side. And I will give you an example of a colleague of mine at the University of Toronto. Everybody knows that individual. And when I was talking to him, it's a guy, Jeffrey Cullen. He has more than 30 or 40 or 50 publications in top journals, 4-star journals. And when we were talking about this specific issue, he said, if I had gotten a loonie in the United States, a loonie is $1. Every time that I was getting a rejection, I would have been millionaire. I hope you get the point. Everybody gets rejections.
So
be patient.
let us all give an applause to the editors, to Jason. Thank you very much, to Andrea, to Stergio. The organization would like to honor them with a plaque. So,
Yeah, thank you.
To you. It's for you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Andreas. Thanks a lot. And to our keynote speaker, John Thanasoulis. Jason is we are going to send you one as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for chairing the session.
And I would like, our pleasure, and I would like to call also the chair of the organization to honor the organizer, Aristidis Amitas, for the excellent organization. Christo.
Yeah, thank you.
Θα ήθελα και εγώ με τη σειρά μου να σας ευχαριστήσω όλους, και τους editor και τον Jason. Έχουμε και τον Jason. Τα είπατε όλα, δεν έχω να πω κάτι. Το μόνο που έχω να πω, βοηθήστε τα παιδιά να δημοσιεύσουν. Αφήστε τα rejection 5%, 12%, αφήστε αυτά με τα 100 και βοηθήστε τον κόσμο Κάντε σχόλια να δημοσιεύσουν. Όχι σχόλια rejection με το καλημέρα. Κάντε σχόλια θετικά. Ζωρίστε τους μεν, βοηθήστε τους δε. Αυτός είναι ο σκοπός μας. Πάλι σας ευχαριστώ όλους και εύχομαι καλή συνέχεια. Καλές γιορτές να έχετε όλοι και του χρόνου. Ευχαριστώ. Αλλά θα συγχαρώ λίγο να δώσω εδώ και εγώ με τη σειρά μου ένα στον κύριο Γουνόπουλο εδώ. Έχω για τον καθένα ειδικό τέτοιο. Και για τους διοργανωτές εδώ. Λείπει ο Νικολάκης, έχει μάθημα, μιλάω για τον Ιριώτη. Οπότε πάμε παραπάνω. Σας ευχαριστώ πάλι. Υγεία και καλές γιορτές.
Jason, thank you very much once more.
Thank you. Good.